Hello and welcome to the ninth of Ovid's Heroides. This letter is from Deianeira, the third wife of Hercules, to her absent husband. In honour of the wives of Hercules, I am wearing my t-shirt with Disney Megara on it. Megara is the first wife of Hercules. One of the many excellent creative decisions that film makes is to stop the story of Meg, as she is in the film, and Hercules, where they get to live happily ever after, and not continue it to the point where, at the very least in Greek myth, he kills all her children and additionally kills her in some versions. Good choice, Disney. We don't all need to know that. But anyway, in her honour, Disney Meg. So Deianeira has put up with a lot from Hercules. He is not a faithful man, but now she's finally getting worried because of two women, actually, that have been in his life. Omphale, to whom Hercules is given in slavery for a year, about whom a lot of men have made a great deal of very pervy art, and Iole, the captive that Hercules has recently taken, by whom Deianeira is extremely threatened. She starts off by saying, great news that you've conquered Achalia, the place where Iole is from. She says, but I'm complaining because the conqueror has succumbed to the conquered. In other words, Hercules has taken Iole captive, but he is held captive by her. She has his love. She says, you weren't broken by Juno's labours. The famous labours of Hercules are indirectly imposed on him by Juno's animus, let's say. But not directly, so it's a little bit of a... she says, but it's Iole that's placed a yoke on you. In other words, he's now like oxen. He's like an animal where I is concerned. She says this is a stain on you, a disgrace. She's genuinely shocked by it, I think. She says Juno must be delighted, although it's Venus who's hurt you here. The one has raised you by crushing you. Juno has made sure that Hercules has to endure all these labours, but it's made him very famous. The other has her foot on your neck. That would be Venus. Do not mess with her. She says you did all these amazing things. You brought peace to land and sea. I guess that depends very much on your perspective for the people who were invaded by Hercules. She says you crushed those poisonous snakes when you were just a baby. That bit is gorgeous in Disney Hercules. You survived all those dangers. Juno couldn't take you out, but love has. That's the problem here. She says Deianeira is really insecure in her status. She says everyone thinks I married above me because you're so impressive. Si qua voles apte nubere nube pari, she says. If you want to marry happily, marry equally. A lesson for us all from Ovid there, ladies and gentlemen. Well done. She says, you're away so much, you're more like a guest than my husband. You're always off chasing monsters and wild beasts. So Deianeira is on her own. She describes herself as being like a single woman, an unmarried woman, widower. Not spelled like widower, I realise, but spelled Vidua, I think. She says, I'm on my own worrying about you because your family is not around. As you go off and do all of this, but it becomes clear that she is mainly worrying about the women that he gets embroiled with, rather than, a hydra or a lion or another vicious animal, a boar. Well, I suppose we're all vicious if someone's going to kill us. She says, I won't mention Algae, one of Hercules' conquests, a woman, or the turba, the crowd of girls, line 51, that you got involved with, the daughters of a son of another, and so on and so on. This is, by the way, a rhetorical device of which I'm enormously fond, called apophasis, the act of not mentioning something. I won't mention, and then goes on to immediately mention it. Cicero is an absolute master of it. And then she says there's Omphale. She doesn't name her. She names her son by Hercules and says, apparently I'm now a stepmother. She's obviously not taken that marvellously. She says, non puduit, aren't you ashamed? There's a very heavy issue of gender-based shame in this poem. It's incredibly interesting, I think. She says, the image of Hercules that she presents is that he's sort of dripping with gold. He looks like an Eastern slave. Omphale is queen of Lydia. So he doesn't look properly Greek either, which is even more worrying, and worrying too to Ovid's audience, that he doesn't look like an idea of a Roman hero, but like an Eastern hero in this description. She says, you're dripping with gold, your hair's done like a woman's. She is piling on this gendered humiliation. And yeah, I can't shake the sense she's given it a lot of thought, almost as if she might be fantasizing about Hercules like this. She's thinking a lot about what he looks like as a slave, for sure. she says, they say, so this is something everyone's talking about, they say you're scared of your mistress's threats. So she's calling him a coward. And she goes on further. I mean, for a really long time, about 7 lines, she talks about Hercules being made to do women's work. Again, this gendered humiliation. She says, you're carrying baskets of wool. That's something women should be doing for weaving and so on. And so Deianeira feels humiliated by this gendered humiliation of Hercules. It's rubbing off on her. When she called his humiliation at the start of this poem a stain, a disgrace, she's more worried about the impact it has on her, I think, in some ways. And then we kind of get to a bit more of the crunch of it. Line 81, she says, Ante pedes domini, you're at your mistress's feet. This is sexual humiliation that she is concerned about, for sure. She lists some of Hercules' great deeds. Of course, he's famous for the labours. She says, what about the Tegean boar? You wrestled with Cerberus, the 3-headed dog. You did all those great deeds. They're worth nothing now because Iole, she's switched very quickly, hasn't she, from Omphale, the woman to whom Hercules was enslaved, and so he has no choice in their relationship, kind of. I think Deianeira might have called it, actually. I think he might be a very willing slave. And then there's Iole, this young woman that Hercules has set his, I was going to say heart, but I think it was probably a different body part, has set himself upon. And he's, destroyed her city, killed her family. As I say, the acts of courtship are rather different in the ancient world. Darling, I've killed every one of your male relatives. Perhaps, not so much. And so she says, all these great deeds mean nothing because Iole is wearing your armour now. Again, this is transgressive gendered behaviour. A minute ago we had Hercules wearing women's clothes, doing women's deeds. Now we've got a young woman wearing men's clothes, wearing his armour. And this is incredibly shocking to Deianeira. She says, she's conquered you. And then in line 106, she's completely explicit. She is the man here. Hercules has been unmanned by his love for Iole. More gender switching. She says she's wearing your lion skin. Hercules famously wears the skin of a lion, the Nemean lion that he killed and skinned. She says the lion isn't the trophy, you are. She looks in the mirror, line 118. Iole looks in the mirror and she's wearing my husband's arms. So it's not just the infidelity, it's the transgression. It's this idea of a woman being able to wear a man's clothes and the clothes of this great hero who himself has dressed as a woman, she feels. It was bad enough when Deianeira was hearing about all this from other people, but now she has seen Iole. Hercules has brought Iole back as his captive. Deianeira calls her a pilex, which means, I guess, whore is probably the best translation. Other people will probably say concubine for maximum euphemism. Deianeira says she was brought to the city as a captive, but she doesn't look like a prisoner. She's covered in gold. She's dressed essentially exactly like Hercules was when he was a slave. She says, it looks like she conquered you, line 127. She doesn't look like the conquered, she looks like the conqueror. And then line 131, we get to the real nub of what's bothering Deianeira. Fortizan, she says, maybe, but this is her real worry, maybe Hercules is going to dump her, Deianeira, and make his pilex, his whore, his wife. Uxor erit, she says, she's going to be your wife. And this is the thing she can't bear. She says, mens fugit admonitu. I can't think about it. My mind flees from the idea. She reminds Hercules that they have had a very passionate love affair themselves. She says, you fought for me twice against Achilles, the pervy river god, and Nessus, a pervy centaur. Who Hercules kills with arrows which have been dipped in the blood of the Hydra, whom he had also killed, and which are poisonous. And she describes Nessus's death. In fecit sanguis equinus aquos, he stained the water with his horse's blood. And we can safely say that that's not an encounter Deianeira enjoyed at all. Interestingly, in Disney Hercules, it's Megara who goes through that, and the two characters are sort of rolled together. Nessus and Achilles are turned into one kind of wet centaur, and it's a little bit less rapey than in the poem, happily, because children's film. Deianeira, in one of the perhaps stupider moments of Greek myth, believes Nessus's dying words. As he's been killed by these arrows shot by Hercules, he realises Deianeira's weak spot and says to her, my blood is now a love potion, brackets, your husband will definitely fall in love with other people, so you'll need to get him back. So why not take it and use it as a love potion? And that's what she's done. This is what we find out in the last moments of the poem. She sent a robe coated in poisoned centaur blood to Hercules, and he is now poisoned and dying. She can't believe that she's done this, and so she is taking her own life in order that they will be together, reunited after death. So I'm afraid another unhappy ending. It is the way with these, but an extraordinary one in which she takes Hercules right down with her. And she ends by saying she hopes they'll be reunited. She says, farewell, oh, if only you could farewell. But perhaps this will be the kind of pledge of our marriage. Little knowing, obviously, that even after death, Hercules will manage to find somebody else and marry again. Bad luck, Deianeira. Next time, Ariadne and Theseus. Finally a happy ending. Just kidding, of course, it goes really badly. See you next time. Lots of love. Bye.